Hi, welcome to our House Noodle blog, blog number 2. I'm Bill, that's Tony. Today we're going to talk about taxation and how taxes affect your property value as promised. Tony's going to kick it off with an explanation of how property taxes are calculated.
There we go. Very high level. So property taxes are supposed to be ad valorem, which is Latin for at value. And what that means is that you're being taxed at the fair market value of your property. And I'm going to read a definition just because I thought it would be interesting, if nothing else, to be very accurate about what we're discussing right now. This is it's a very complex subject. So fair market value, or FMV, which appraisers use all the time, is the price a product would sell for on the open market, assuming that both buyer and seller are reasonably knowledgeable about the asset, are behaving in their own best interests, are free of undue pressure, and are given a reasonable time period for completing the transaction. And usually it's in cash. So ad valorem taxation can work in a number of different ways, but assessors have a tendency to play with something that's called a mill rate. And so what they do is that they'll value a property, whether valuations are going up or down, fair market value in a subdivision, and then they'll adjust the mill rate to make sure that their incoming revenue stream isn't affected. Because, let's face it, we pay property taxes for a reason, for schools and for fire and police and infrastructure and all the other stuff that goes with it. So there's nothing wrong with it.
The main source of revenue for the states, and the states, they can't operate with less taxes.
Precisely. Yeah, precisely. So that's a very high level view of property taxation and how it works. I'm going to pass it on to Bill right now because he's going to get into the weeds where he usually likes to live and explain some things to you about how that whole thing operates. Bill?
Thanks, Tony. I'm really not going to get into the weeds today. I'm going to keep this as a very high level as well. But I want to talk about how tax rates affect property value. So in its essence, high tax states aren't as attractive to home buyers. People migrate to escape high property taxes by selling their homes and moving to low tax areas. For over a decade, people have been fleeing states like California, New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, due in large part to unreasonable property taxes. So how does that affect the market value or the appreciation rate of homes in those states? In those states, each year, over 2% of their homes ad valorem or market value are taken in taxes. So for instance, in a typical $400,000 home, that's like $8,000 a year that goes to the state. So that money's going to the state. Now, it's not going to pay off the mortgage principal. It's not going to pay do any deferred maintenance on the home to add an addition. It's just going to the state. So
it's a straight up tax.
It's a straight up tax, and it has a chilling effect on property values. Over the course of a 30-year mortgage, if the state's taking, say, 2% a year of the market value of the home, more or less in the course of 40 years, you're paying to the state what you paid for that home at the purchase price. And you're paying that whether you rent or whether you own. Renters pay the property taxes even though they may not know it and it's not as apparent. Just to live in shelter in a high tax state, you're paying 2%. So for that $400,000 home, I think let's say the median family income in a state like Illinois, where I'm from, is around $70,000. The state's taking 11% of the gross. That doesn't leave an awful lot left over for the homeowners to do maintenance on their homes, to make improvements. In my opinion, they're too high and it's just wrong.
So let me interject something real quick. In California, there's a proposition where property taxes are frozen. So the minute that you buy a piece of property, your property taxes are frozen at a specific rate. Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics in front of me to tell you exactly how it works, but I know the general principle of it, which is, yeah, you get a tax break until you sell the property, then you get a clawback. So whether you get stung over time that you own that property, or you get stung at the end of owning that property is immaterial. The government still gets their money. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I agree with Bill. It's too high. It's an unburdenable tax that there's just really no reason for it. It should be lower. The way that it's calculated should be more defined across the country. Again, like I said, when you're talking about the mill rate and how that can be adjusted, I can tell you personally, when I left Illinois in 2010, my property taxes were significant. Property values were going backwards, but my property taxes, they never changed. They still wanted their pound of flesh, and I had to pay that pound of flesh.
Even when your property values were decreasing, they still want their tax money.
Exactly.
So it becomes more of a burden in a declining market. And Tony and I both agree that we're heading into a declining real estate market. Those taxes become more of a burden. And if you look at states with lower property taxes, they've had historically better appreciation over the past decade or so, while the high tax states have had less appreciation. I'm going to post a blog with some statistics and some detail on this that you can look over. That'll be up in a few minutes. And I think with that, we're going to say adieu today.
There you go. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks.